This was an interesting development on Thursday afternoon. It started with a report from the Washington Post that the congressional investigation of years of toxic workplace misconduct in the Washington Commanders organization has pivoted to potential financial improprieties. The chair of the committee that's investigating the Commanders later confirmed that indeed this turn has been taken. A.J. Perez of Front Office Sports later reported that the investigation, Peter King, is looking into whether or not 2 sets of books were used by an organization that has become very debt-heavy as Daniel Snyder bought out his 3 limited partners a year or 2 ago. Bless you if that was a sneeze. And also, bless you anyway, even if it was a cough. And also, look, this is a time when there's a lot of storm clouds over Daniel Snyder, and this is just another one. You just wonder how many becomes too many and when it all reaches a critical mass. But this has got to be troubling because this is the kind of stuff people go to jail for. If you can substantiate that this kind of accounting fraud has happened, and I don't know that it has. I'm not saying it. I'm just repeating the news that's out there. Don't sue me, Daniel Snyder. But this is the kind of thing that can get people in very real trouble, and this would seem like the kind of thing that can get people to lose their NFL franchises if it can be established.
You know, Mike, I thought my first thought was, thank God for the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. Nobody even knows what that is who's watching this show. I don't really know what it is. All I know is that somebody other than the NFL is investigating, and even though the NFL has another investigation now that they've launched with Mary Jo White, investigating Daniel Snyder, but everybody other than I think Roger Goodell and Daniel Snyder was unhappy with the results of the previous investigation when 40-some women came forward and detailed an environment of sexual harassment or worse inside the organization. And the response was to get an oral report when the Tom Brady Deflategate report was 9,000 pages long and the Ray Rice report was 8,900 pages long, and whatever they were, it was a lot more than what the Washington investigation was. So when I look at this, I say I'm thankful that we have a government in Washington that sees misdeeds or they see something mishandled, as the investigation was, the initial investigation into Daniel Snyder's team, and says, we're going ahead with our own investigation. We have subpoena power, and we're going to get to the bottom of what happened.
You're absolutely right. I had an image there of Jerry and Kramer having a back and forth as to what the House Oversight and Reform Committee is. Well, they exercise oversight and they reform.
It's a Johnson rod.
Hey, listen, it all goes back to whoever ordered the hit, as Brent Musburger so eloquently has explained it, on John Gruden. This was all ignored. It was gone. It was over. No one was talking about it. No one was thinking about it. They picked the absolute right time on the calendar to announce the penalties. It was Thursday, July 1 of an extra long 4th of July weekend because a lot of people didn't work on Friday the 2nd. A lot of people didn't work on Monday the 5th. By Tuesday the 6th, it was vaporized. There was nothing about it, and no one said anything about it until somebody decided to peel off some emails from the 650,000 document dump that was otherwise secret and got John Gruden fired. That's what gave this thing life, Peter. So whoever did that, for whatever reason, and there's speculation out there that it was Daniel Snyder, if so, man, that was the worst move he ever made, because that opened the door again. It caused people to take much closer look at what Beth Wilkinson did and what she wasn't allowed to do. They told her, we don't want a written report. I reported during Super Bowl week, during the pregame. If she'd have written the report, if they'd have said, write the report would have included a recommendation that this man should be forced out as owner of the team. That's why they didn't want a report. And it wasn't to protect Daniel Snyder. It was to protect the rest of the owners. They didn't want to set a precedent that then could be used against others if you have a disgruntled employee who realizes, hey, if I make just the right allegations, just the right accusations, here comes an independent investigator who starts looking around, maybe finds something, and the next thing you know, another owner goes down, then another owner goes down. That's why they've resisted letting this out there. But you're right. The Oversight and Reform Committee, they're going to keep looking, and they're going to keep scratching, and they're going to find something. And it sounds like they're onto something different from the toxic workplace environment. But would it surprise anyone? At this point, would anything that they could establish really surprise us about the Washington Commanders organization based upon the things we already know? I'm not going to be surprised by it. I don't know what the truth is, but whatever it is, I'm not going to be surprised by it.
I think, Mike, the one thing you have to be... I keep wondering this, quite honestly. I mean, if you're Daniel Snyder... isn't there some sort of limit that you can take, after getting beat over the head every day by everybody in the media, nationally, locally, by your team losing most of the time. But, it's just, don't you say, maybe I should do something else. Year after year after year, he just gets crap poured all over his head. And all he does is saying, we're not selling the team. We're not, I don't quite understand what would motivate a person who has nothing but heartache other than cashing checks, who has nothing but heartache with this team, why he hangs in there.
I know why he does. When he was going through the struggles with his limited partners back in 2020, and there were all sorts of lawsuits and allegations, and it got very ugly, and he finally just bought them all out because they couldn't find anyone to buy their limited shares because they couldn't find somebody who wanted to do business with Daniel Snyder, frankly.
Yeah.
His motivation is he wants to give the team to his kids. And that's why I think if push comes to shove, the resolution that would avoid years of litigation between the NFL and Daniel Snyder could be he steps aside, his wife takes over, the kids get the team at some point down the line. Mission accomplished. He just continues to be in this weird status he's in now where Roger Goodell says he's not involved in day-to-day operations, but there have been some reports suggesting that he is. He's still on 4 NFL committees, and Ron Rivera was on radio during the season saying he talks to Daniel Snyder a couple of times a week. So I don't know what his status is right now. I don't know if it's double secret probation. I don't know what it is, but he's involved. And right. If he's officially not involved, but he's still kind of hanging around, then so be it. But that may be the end result. If he can have the confidence at the end of the day his kids will have the team, and I don't know if fans should be excited about that unless the apple falls in the next orchard over, but that's a different issue altogether. But then maybe that would be a way for him to find an exit ramp and no longer be the owner. But I agree with you. And maybe you're just wired a certain way if you're Daniel Snyder, where you welcome this fight and you're looking for anybody that you can take the fight to and you thrive in this kind of dysfunction. I don't know. But, Peter, after years of it, and he's owned that team since 1999, there's a point where you say, life's too short to deal with this crap all the time. I am constantly under siege.
Not only that, Mike, but I've told this story a lot, but I covered the New York Giants for 4 years in the 80s. And far and away, underline, exclamation point, my favorite assignment every year that I covered the team was the road trip to Washington. Because it was the old RFK Stadium. And when you were in that press box, which was kind of one of those slung low press boxes just below the stands, and every game with New York and Washington, there would be a point at some point in the game. Theismann would have him rallying or there'd be a big play, and you could feel the press box move. It was like 3 or 4 times a game there was an earthquake. And the first time I felt it, I said, whoa. I mean, because I looked around and like nobody was, it was like nobody was paying attention to it because it happens all the time. But that was the level of love that that region had for that team. It was as boisterous a crowd, as ravenous a crowd as anywhere in the NFL. And just think about this. That was less than 40 years ago, and that continued into the 90s. And Gibbs and Beathard had this team going so well. But from the time that Daniel Snyder owned this team in 1999, you have seen a steady erosion of the fan base, a steady erosion of people who even care anymore. They simply don't care. And they vote with their feet. They don't show up anymore, Mike. And, I read a story from when Dallas was there this year. There's a story that said there's no question that more than half of a crowd that wasn't even a sellout were Cowboy fans. And so that is what is so sad about all this, and why I cannot understand for the life of me why the NFL is bending over backwards to protect Daniel Snyder. He's run the franchise into the ground.
Well, I think plenty of owners like it when there's a team that is inherently dysfunctional, because then it's easier to win the game that you play against them from time to time, and in some cases twice per year. But you're right, Peter, at some point enough is enough. And that's got to be the most frustrating aspect of being a fan. The players come and go, the coaches come and go. But if you get an owner who, number one, isn't very good, and number two, will cling to that team until he takes his last breath,
like grim
you got a
death.
problem. Which is coming soon, I might add. Leo.
All right, Uncle Leo, on with it.
But yeah, at some point, Peter, you're just going to find something else to do on Sundays in September, October, November, December. You're not going to continue to disappoint yourself. It never gets any better, and that's not good for the NFL. And I really do have a sense. Now, I haven't recalibrated or otherwise refreshed the sense that I got back in February, but I think that some have had enough. And, I said this yesterday, and I have nothing to base this on, but I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't somebody connected to the NFL who maybe knows some things about what may or may not be going on with the Washington Commanders, who may be cooperating unofficially with the House Oversight and Reform Committee, because it's a lot easier for Daniel Snyder to be pushed out the door if someone else develops enough evidence to make it a no-brainer. Because one of the reasons I think they are resisting is they know he will not go down without a very protracted, expensive, and hostile fight. So we'll see how that plays out. But it continues. People from time to time ask me, what's going on with the Washington Commanders? What's going on? Well, when there's news, we'll report it. I mean, we can't go make news if it isn't there. Yesterday's developments count as news.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.